Good morning. This is our podcast about all things menopause today. So I'd just like to welcome all of the ladies on the call today. We have Julie Robinson, founder and CEO of MenoHealth. Welcome, Julie.
Hi.
Claire Hattrick, founder of the Executive Menopause Coach. Welcome. And Emma
Hi.
Heslop, commercial director at The Bigger Boat. And then, of course, myself, Sarah, and Lisa, my business partner.
Hello.
Welcome, ladies. So today we are here to talk about menopause and menopause awareness. And for Lisa and I, we certainly aren't medical experts at all. However, we are two women who are trying to run a business and doing a pretty good job, who are also going through menopause at the same time and juggling houses, homes, children, and a number of other things that are important to us. And we both feel really passionately about menopause awareness and supporting our clients in becoming more supportive environments for women that are going through the menopause. The report that we've recently run is Menopause in the Workplace, Breaking the Silence, where The Bigger Boat, Emma and her team, helped us survey 1,000 women to shed light on the challenge of menopause being insufficiently recognised and supported in the workplace. And what we wanted to do was provide actionable recommendations to help businesses support people going through menopause. And we have some brilliant people on the podcast today to help us navigate some of that. So I thought a good place to kick off would be around understanding the different stages of menopause, because quite often menopause is collected together as one wonderful experience without people truly understanding the variances of it. And so I just wanted to open up the conversation around the different stages, and also to ask what stage each of us are at in the menopause. So I'm going to open it out to the wider team. I don't know who wants to take that in terms of the different stages of menopause.
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in on that one, Sarah. I agree. I think that it causes quite a lot of confusion, and it wasn't until relatively recently that anyone knew about the word perimenopause. And now, of course, it's used a lot, which is good. The education is seeping through. But I think it's really understanding menopause is actually only sort of diagnosed, if you like, in hindsight, when someone's gone 1 year, 12 months without a menstrual period. The average age is 51 in the UK. But it's the years running up to that that are often the most troublesome because people think, oh, it's a decade away. It can happen in those late 30s, early 40s, mid 40s for sure, when the unusual symptoms start to arise, not your hot flushes that you'd associate with menopause. And that's why it takes people by surprise, not in a good way.
Oh, I'd love to jump in there, Julie. I echo your sentiments. I don't know whether you ladies know, but I actually lost 10 years of my life to undiagnosed menopause joint pain, which left me unable to stand, sit or walk. I didn't know, again, echoing Julie's sentiments, I'd never heard what perimenopause was. I thought menopause was old ladies in their 60s, 70s. I'm heading in that direction. And hot flushes. Never had a hot flush. I have to say, I've got the heating on today. And worryingly, a lot of doctors and consultants that I was under also didn't know what perimenopause or menopause was. I'm now post-menopause by nearly 16 years. I'm 57. I clearly went through an early menopause at 40. Don't remember any of my 40s actually. It's a complete, yeah, so you name it, I've gone through it. The anxiety, the not sleeping, didn't leave the house for nearly 3 years.
Wow.
Why I do what I do today. And one thing I would love to add to this, obviously this question is, women, we talk in this menopause space about the word transition, and I say to everyone, we've got to stop using it, because women think they're hormones. They say, oh, when will I be through it? Well, there's no easy way of saying this, but you are post-menopause for life. So if you're having issues, I always say to people, please go and get it looked at, because you are just basically losing years of your life.
It's so impactful, isn't it? And I think that a lot of people don't understand the significant impact that it has on your daily life, and the thought that we should just continue, like just keep going.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's just not possible. And, you know, with your own experience, Claire, it is so impactful for some people.
Emma,
Absolutely.
what about you?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I'm in menopause, and I went through early menopause, and really didn't expect it at all. I think I was very uneducated about what menopause was. Never heard of perimenopause before. I know that now it's a well talked about subject, but 5 years ago, it wasn't, and it came as an absolute complete shock to me. And looking back, I realised why I was feeling the way I was feeling, but I just didn't know it at the time. So I think there's a massive gap in the education really around menopause. It was quite funny because I was actually talking to my daughter who's 17 last night, and I just said, "Do you know what menopause is?" And she said, "I've heard about it and I know what it is, but I don't know enough. I don't know a lot about it." And she said, "The only way I know about it is from Jackie off Friday Night Dinner, which is a TV program." And she says, and she struggles on the program. So I do think there's a massive lack of education around the subject.
Yeah, 100% there is. And I think for me, I'm probably perimenopausal, and have been probably for about 5 years. And I had suddenly a really awful year, didn't really understand what was going on. My emotions were all over the place. My behaviours are super erratic. And I have a history of mental illness in the family. So I took myself to the doctor thinking, okay, this is me now. I've now got a mental illness. My dad is schizophrenic, and my sister has personality disorder. So I thought, right, that's my turn. So this is me. I'm probably going to have dementia. There's going to be something. And I remember going and talking through, and it wasn't particularly helpful because what she said to me is, "Oh, I just think you're working too hard, and I think you just need to be kind to yourself." So I kind of came away from that feeling a bit like, oh, there isn't anything wrong with me. This is just me. Just this is me. This is who I am, and this is what it's going to be like. And then it probably took another 2 years. That year happened when I settled down a little bit. My hormones must have balanced out again a little bit, but then started to feel quite bad again and feel my anxiety. The anxiety, I've never had anxiety before, unless I'm worried about something, which is a natural body response. But then this anxiety I would wake up in the night and I'd be anxious and I'd be like, okay, what have I forgotten? What am I worried about? And I'd go through the logical thinking process so that I could manage it. Didn't make a difference, not one single bit of difference. And so for me, that's been the biggest symptom that I've never really had previously. And now it's kind of an ongoing battle to kind of keep that anxiety just under control even. And it's just like this. I feel like I'm on a roller coaster with it. I can wake up one day and I feel fine. I think, oh, it's gone. Oh my goodness, it's good. And then the next day I wake up and it's back again and it's full on and I'm like, oh, it's back.
I'm perimenopausal, have been for 6 years. I had my children quite late. So it was about a year after I'd given birth to my youngest. I actually thought I had postnatal depression. It kind of woke up one day, sort of hit me like a bus. Depression and anxiety, couldn't leave the house. Assumed it was that. Went to the doctor, who, of course, diagnosed me with antidepressants, which is a fairly standard first place for any GP to go to. Went back a few times and then ended up asking to be referred to a GP that specialised in women's health. And at that point, she literally within 5 minutes of the conversation said, "I think you're perimenopausal," at which point I cried for 30 minutes. I think, poor woman, we've been treating all the symptoms, but because of the lack of knowledge in the NHS, had treated every single one of those symptoms without really joining all the dots for the cause. And it's still a fight. Honestly, it's still a fight. When your
100%.
hormones change, going back to the GP, I often go back to the same place with them. And actually educating myself has helped me navigate some of those conversations. And I agree with Emma, there is a gap, and that's just me Googling, talking to people, trying to pull together all of my resources so that I can have a joined up conversation with a GP and push my point. But not everybody's built the same way. Or has.
Isn't it sad, Sarah, that we have to literally sort our own health out. 51% of the population are going to go through this, plus LGBTQI plus, anyone assigned female at birth. We shouldn't have to be Googling and joining Facebook groups and things like that. But I learn more through the group that I now run. I've got a Facebook group as well. And I think that some people just want to sit in the background, but read about the symptoms. And I just think if that's your light bulb moment, then, we know our NHS is incredibly overstretched, as are our wonderful GPs and consultants. But, we campaign hard for mandatory menopause training for all GPs. I see Julie nodding her head. To me, I wouldn't have lost, and I say 10 years, it was probably nearer 12 or 13 years of my life, because I was under the top consultants: arthritis, Lyme's disease, fibromyalgia, a tennis elbow, knees, hips, and all of them were top of their game. I speak to some of them today because I think they hand out certain diagnoses like they're Smarties when they really don't know what's wrong with you. And I've gone from being a relatively fit woman to somebody who had my own parking space outside my doctor's surgery. And they said, well, we've seen you twice in 20 years. I would turn up there, picking up on what you said, Lisa, in bare feet in the snow, having what I now know to be a panic and anxiety attack. I was literally climbing across my GP's desk, trying to get out of the window, but nobody ever mentioned my hormones, ever.
And that's just so I find that really surprising that at no point do people think to have a look and see whether the hormones are having some kind of part to play in the way that you feel. And is that because they're not educated? But then I think I'm going to a GP. You are much more educated than I am about health, and hormones are part of health in men and women, right? Because it changes for a man as well. It's not just the change for a woman. And I just don't understand why. And I've heard people that have gone and said, oh, I think there's something wrong with my hormones. I think I might be perimenopausal. And they've been poo-pooed effectively and said, no. I don't think it's that. I think, a bit like me, you're just overwhelmed. You're just working too hard. You're not being kind enough to yourself. Your expectations of yourself are too much. No, I think sometimes you know your own body and you know it's not that. Those are different. You can manage those. This is something that is, I think, for me, it's the unmanageableness of it. Suddenly, you feel out of control of your own body, and it's like having an out-of-body experience, and you look back at yourself and think, who am I? What's happened? Overnight, I've turned into a different person. What is going on?
I think as well that it's really important when you're talking about the education piece, which is fantastic because of doing this type of report and podcast, it helps so much, is how the choices you make during this stage are so vital for the rest of your life. Now, I'm way post-menopausal, but I had a hysterectomy at 36, and it occurred during the time that the research linked HRT with breast cancer. Now, having lost 3 sisters-in-law and being a fundraiser, raising £1 million for charity, when the doctor said to me, you don't want HRT because it could cause breast cancer, of course I went, oh no, never. Now, I didn't know then, if only we could live our life backwards. And if only I knew then what I know now. Because I should have had estrogen at least up to the time that typical menopause would occur at 51, I missed out on a golden opportunity during those years to have estrogen for my bones. Now, I was a PE teacher. I have exercised and jumped up and down all my life. I've done the calcium, the Vit D, everything. And I found, only because I requested it from a DEXA scan, that I'd got osteoporosis. Now, nobody knows they have this unless they've had a trip and a tumble and a fracture, or they get a DEXA scan. And it's a silent killer. And 1 in 2 women over 50 will have an osteoporotic fracture. How vast is that? We need to educate people to say, you've got to look, if it's early menopause, pre-40 or POI, whether you are perhaps more likely to need HRT. And I know not everybody can have it or wants to have it, but in my case, we now know that estrogen-only HRT doesn't increase your risk of breast cancer at all. So I'm saddled with a lifelong condition that I could have avoided if I'd been given the right advice and the right education and the right treatment.
Yeah, and I don't know if that's changed recently, because it was probably 4.5 years ago when we were in COVID. I wasn't feeling very great about myself. Decided I wanted to go to the doctors, but it was a phone conversation because obviously we were in COVID. And she said to me, "You need to come in straight away, and I'll just take your blood." And then basically she said, "You're in menopause." But she said to me that you need to go on HRT. She said for obviously that reason, for your bones. And she said that's exactly what I would advise. I went away and read up about it, obviously, because we've heard about the link to breast cancer and things like that. But she almost said to me, it was like, I want you to take HRT. That's what I advise. If you don't take to it or you don't like it, I think we've got a problem. But you need, I really advise you to take it. So maybe, recently things have changed around that subject as well, because it was almost like it wasn't an option for me. She wanted me to go down that route and really advised it. So.
There's a real postcode lottery, though, isn't there? Sorry, Julie, of GPs are either really pro HRT or really anti. And I want to also jump on and say, again, echo Julie's sentiments that more women die of heart disease than they do of breast cancer. So having that some sort of burst and some sort of period of time on HRT, I've taken it. I'm happy to share. I had to come off of it because after 2.5 years of constantly bleeding, I did the Mirena coil. I did synthetic progesterone, which is a 1% increase in cancer. I did everything. And in the end, I was under a lot of specialists that joined together and said, you can't go on like this. So I was mortified, thinking, well, I won't be able to walk again. But again, like Julie, so far down the line, post-menopause, I think the hormones have probably bottomed out as much as they're going to, but I'm well aware they could always blip at any time. But yeah, I've done a couple of years. I hope I've bought myself, like Julie, my mum had osteopenia, which is the lead up to osteoporosis, but she turned it round with medication and diet. But I'm sorry to hear you've been left with that, Julie, because it's often older ladies who have a fall, end up with a hip fracture.
Yeah,
One of my daughters is a London paramedic, and she said, I hate to say it, Mum, but they are the bed blockers. You've got older ladies, 70s, 80s, hip fracture, leg fracture, in hospital, bed blocking. Then they end up in some sort of nursing home. And often these women don't come out because they're completely unaware. Women's health has been shockingly underfunded, as I'm sure you'll all agree. But yeah, I just wish women knew the facts that, obviously, Emma, you've got a great, I do want to applaud some of these GPs that at least are looking at the bigger picture. And, obviously the risks have to outweigh, the benefits have to outweigh the risks. Everybody's journey is unique. But I just think, you've either got a doctor. I've had a lady contact me yesterday saying, literally, I heard your presentation, Claire. The bit up the top of the car park resonated. I've been to my GP and they've said, come back when you're 51. And she's 48. She said, I won't be here, Claire, when I'm 51. I'm absolutely. So I signposted her. I'm not medically trained. I signposted her to a menopause GP who I know will help her. And you'd like to think you've maybe saved somebody's life, because I've been that person. It affects your mental health, like you were saying, Lisa, massively.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really interesting because when I went back for my a bit of a check, because I was using gel and taking the progesterone pill, and it wasn't quite right for me. And then we talked about patches, and the doctor said, "Oh, you can only do all of this for 5 years. Then you're going to have to come off all of the HRT." And I was like, "What? So what am I going to do?" And then I was a bit panicked. So, well, what am I going to do if it takes me 10 years? What if it takes me 15 years? Like, how am I actually going to? What am I going to do? How am I going to supplement myself? And I can do that through, I supplement myself in so many other ways as well, with magnesium, lots and lots of different things to make my body the best it can be. But that also really concerned me. And I thought, right, I'm going to have to go away. I'm going to have to look at this, because I'm sure this isn't correct. I'm sure I can take it for longer. And so I have to push back. And I have found out you can take it for longer, and people later on in life do actually come off it, find that their symptoms come back and go back on it, and that's absolutely fine. So I think sometimes the doctors don't always give you quite accurate information, and or perhaps they give you a piece of information, but they don't give you the whole context around the information that they're sharing.
Problem is, Lisa, they're not trained. They're almost having to watch people like us and listen to these chats and do a little bit of Mr. Google themselves, because they're not trained. And our poor GPs do take a bashing, but they have to know top to toe millions and millions of symptoms.
Yeah, of course they do.
Yeah. And then I think, wouldn't it be wonderful? And I know this is probably it's something that is a bit of a pipe dream, that just at least there is one expert in every group of surgeries, you know? Doesn't have to be every surgery. I appreciate that we can't do that, but just one expert, somebody who is absolutely an expert around menopause, because actually you're going to have people come through your doors time after time after time with all of these symptoms, like me, thinking that you've got early onset dementia, or you've got schizophrenia because your dad was a schizophrenic, you know, all of these things. That frees up the GPs to deal with the things that they're experts in. And perhaps, you know, I just wonder if there's something that can happen.
They are starting to roll out. We have in Mid Hampshire Health, we now have you can go and see a menopause nurse.
Right.
And I have to say, it didn't take too long for me. Within I think it was 6 to 8 weeks. So that it's getting
That's
out
good.
there, but again, it's
That
that
is good.
postcode lottery.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
If you have a million people that walk into a local surgery today, it's not going to be a 6 to 8 week, is it?
No,
Wait. So,
no.
but at least it's a start. We're on the step of the first rung of a very long ladder. I like to think, but we're heading in the right direction, keeping it
We
on
are.
positive, ladies.
Yeah.
Definitely.
All the lobbying that's been done by the all-party parliamentary group, and talking about women's health hubs. Well, wouldn't it be perfect if there's your one-stop shop for, say, your cervical screening, your mammograms, your coil. Oh, and why don't we talk about menopause before it even happens? So you're educated, you're aware, but you're not scared, because you know, I've got a choice. There's loads of things I can do to support myself, including HRT, or whether or not you're going down that route, lots of other things you can do to help yourself too.
Just picking up on, you know, some of the symptoms, the report that we ran found that 38% of women battled with feelings of anxiety. And we've had comments from the report where women have said they were ignored or left to get on with it.
So I think just thinking about that, and just thinking, Claire, a question for you specifically, kind of what mechanisms have you helped, do you think can help women to support their mental and emotional challenges that they're having?
I think the most important thing is education. And if we can get, you know, we now know, if we've campaigned hard, if the schools are following the RSC curriculum, they're taught about sex ed, periods, and they do a bit of menopause. But there's a big gap between there and your 90, 100-year-old. So for me, when I'm coaching my ladies, I think it's knowing the basics. A lot of women don't know, like we said initially, what menopause is. You know, again, Julie said it's 12 months and 1 day since you last had that period. But if we can educate women, and hopefully our GPs, things should start gelling together. But when people come to me, they're often in the depths of despair, like I was. They don't come because they just want a chat. They come because they either think, like you, Lisa, there's something dramatically wrong with them. They're not getting anywhere with their GPs. And I hate to say it, but a lot of the time I am another almost emergency service. Yeah. They're like, I saw you, I heard you talking. I know you do menopause coaching. I've got this and the other. So I tend to, before they've said anything, I tend to talk them very simply through what menopause is, the receptors that are all over your body that send all the hormones to your vagina, your brain, your little toe. And then you can see the cog10. That's why in the morning I can't remember my name. I answer my work phone with my old school, my own home school telephone number. And you can see, and then I think, one, it calms them down because they don't think they've gone completely mad and doolally. And once you've done that, then I talk to them about all their symptoms. Now, I've got a little symptom checker with about 70 odd symptoms. Some of them you won't. But if they don't affect your day-to-day life and they're not debilitating, it's like my daughter came home in lockdown and decided most nights to have a nice big bag of popcorn. She got the look every night. And if you don't go and get a bowl, that crunching of that bag, I could have actually gone and slapped her one. I've obviously got very sensitive hearing now. And I can remember it was like somebody was running their nails down a boat. Now, a lot of people don't talk about that. And also in lockdown, I had a real build-up of terrible earwax. It was so bad. It took 2 specialists, because obviously they weren't doing, you had to have it sucked out back then, to be able to sort my hearing out. And by the time that my ears had cleared, they said we see a lot of postmenopausal women with a massive build-up of earwax. Who knew? But when I go through all these symptoms and women say to me, well, I've got 58 out of 70, but my GP says I'm too young for menopause. I help them put a letter together. I'm not medically trained, as I've said, but if I can help somebody put this letter together, I always say, right, take with you, print out all your symptoms and put that under your GP's nose. One, you're helping save their time. So I do like to think I'm a bit of an emergency service. I know I've had a few men that have come to me and said, I know you don't coach men. I said, I'm more than happy to talk to you. And a lot of women are in denial. They feel that, I mean, for me, it was a massive relief after 14 years of being, well, I thought I was just going mad. I think for lots of women, they just want to know, right, sigh of relief. At least I know I'm not like me, terminally ill, and nobody wants to tell me, because that's the point I got to. So I think, and it's like men, they say, is it a silly question? Nothing's a silly question if we're educating people. And men, obviously, we know it affects men as well as it affects women. Marriages end.
Yeah,
I was just in a women's health magazine with Halle Berry. They told her she had herpes. And it got me thinking, how many
Yes, I saw
marriages
that.
have ended because
Yeah.
you haven't been playing the field. They know they haven't. And in the end, bearing in mind Halle Berry probably has a lot more money than we do. She on her fourth, she went to 4 different doctors for different opinions. They said, oh, you've got vaginal atrophy. And it got me thinking, how many people of their marriages have ended over the last 30, 40, 50 years because you've accused your husband, partner, lover, whatever, of playing around. Education. You'll always hear me say that.
Yeah.
People go, roll their eyes. If we're not educated, how on earth do we know, doctors know, partners know, and our next generation of women that I feel passionately about should not be losing years of their lives like lots of us have.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think another thing that I think I found quite difficult was kind of confidence. And I've always been a super confident person, all of my, especially at work, professionally, extremely confident. And suddenly to sit there and just suddenly think, continuously questioning yourself in the moment. We work with lots of small startups, male dominated businesses, and often they're young and they're super clever, and so you have this expectation of yourself, got to think on your feet, think on your feet, think on your feet. And I'd be super confident to think on my feet, and suddenly I could hear myself going, can I come back to you on that? And I'd have to go away and in my peace and quiet just check with myself that my response was going to be correct. And I've never ever had that issue before, and even had feedback to say, Cool, you're just super fearless in what you do. And I sit there and think, I'm not now. And that, I think, has come from that. And I think that impacts the way that you view yourself. Your self-image suddenly starts to change. I don't know if anybody else has experienced similar.
Physically as well as mentally, right? Because physically, one of the brilliant symptoms of menopause is putting on weight. Is losing your hair sometimes. And that was a surprising one for me. 1 minute, lustrous locks, and the next minute is coming out in fistfuls in my hand in the shower. But also putting on weight and filling out in places that you really don't want to has a massive impact on that image and on your confidence levels. I think for me it was the anxiety and brain fog. And the things that worked for me, I have to give myself a good talking to in the morning, which is don't forget who you are, because I really did feel like I'd lost who I was. All the things that I knew about myself no longer existed, or if they did, they were under a heavy blanket. So I now have to work in a slightly different way. Whereas before I could wing it, I can't even remember the word "and" some days, which is a little bit tricky when you're still presenting and in front of high functioning clients and individuals. And then I get really frustrated, which is a spiral of its own. So for me, what works is doubling down on preparing. I just have to accept that I cannot work in the way that I did before. And I also spend more time on my makeup, the way I look, self-care, getting to the gym, because I need to feel good about myself, as well as spending additional and extra time on almost like preparing myself for work or for certain situations. Yeah, that I
The
never.
day ahead, isn't it?
Yeah, that I didn't have to do. So it's new routines for me, and not taking things for granted, because that day has passed. Now I need to operate in a different world.
I think we're very bad at prioritising ourselves, aren't we? So it's good to hear you doing that. You know, you're being pulled from pillar to post normally at this age of during perimenopause, menopause, and with work, with perhaps grown-up kids, aging parents, and the pressure's piling on. And I think our cortisol, our stress levels just keep rising. And that's why we at MenoHealth have tried to include some, I'll say, movement, not exercise, because it puts people off. Like, if you can go to the gym, fantastic. But a third of women stop being physically active just when they need to be more for their heart health, the weight gain, the bone density, all the wonderful benefits. But it's just finding ways to include that easy movement that's going to help reduce some of the stress hormone, which affects the menobelly massively. You know, too much cortisol, you know, all of the stress hormones are going to have an impact on that weight gain. Right? You know, we have a whole session on where's my waist, because everybody says I look like, you know, SpongeBob SquarePants. Where's my waist gone? And it's like, oh no, you know, all of your jeans, your trousers are too tight. And as you say, it affects your confidence, your self-esteem, how you feel. So if you can find a way to just take control of that, it gives you back that sense of empowerment instead of being this unwilling passenger on a crazy menopause journey.
For me, I think I found, because I obviously wasn't aware of what I was going through, it was the tiredness for me. And I didn't, you know, at first I thought my mum's got really bad problems with thyroid, so I just presumed that, you know, it's definitely going to be that. But I was just so tired and exhausted. I didn't really know, you know, why I was so tired, which obviously what prompted me to go to the doctors in the first place. But I think there's a real misconception about the length of time people are in menopause, or, you know, all the stages and everything, because actually, you know, whether you're in your 30s, 40s or 50s, it's a long time. And I think people think that it can be over in 6 months, a year, 2 years, you know, and it's just not the case really. And, you know, probably at this time, this age, we're all really going through maybe the height of our careers and things like that. We're focusing on our careers. We're thinking about people, our colleagues within the business, and caring about them. We've got families, like you said, our parents are getting older and things like that. So there's so much going on in our lives that we forget to actually focus on ourselves as well. And I really found that exercise really helped. But I was at that stage where I was low in confidence, didn't really want to put my gym kit on and go to the gym. I didn't really feel like a woman, which sounds, but I didn't feel like a woman and didn't want to go out and do things. And somebody actually said to me, have you tried going out walking? And I was like, oh, I don't really want to go out walking, you know, I'm not getting my heart rate up, I'm not going to the gym. But actually we bought a dog, and I found that was one of the best things that we ever did, because actually getting up in the morning and getting out, because you've got to walk the dog, whether it's raining, snowing, sunny, fresh air, and you know, 40 minutes an hour before you start your day really, really kind of helped me to kind of, you know, to think about myself, time for actually thinking about myself before I started to think about everybody else in the world. So, but
Brilliant.
Makes a lot of sense. And then, so just thinking about, so from the report that we kind of commissioned, one of the things that Sarah and I are really passionate about was like the support in the workplace, because, you know, one of the highest numbers of people leaving their roles, especially from women, is during their peri and menopausal stage, because of the symptoms that we've all just laid out there. There's so many symptoms that people have, and they decide that actually they're just going to leave because they can't continue in the workplace. Why do you actually think menopause is still such a taboo in the workplace?
Oh, well.
It's a big question, I know, but I mean,
I think listening to, of course, it's very individual, but I think generally more and more people that we hear say the same type of thing, that they're too embarrassed. And so they want to keep it a secret, and they're not telling anyone. They'll think, this is a weakness of mine. I'll lose my job because I can't do what I've always done, and so I'll just keep it a secret, which is really sad. And absolutely, I think your report's highlighted this, and it's a very important thing that we can all tackle by creating a culture where it's okay to talk about. It's going to happen to every woman in varying degrees over various amount of times with different symptoms, but it is going to happen to everyone. So there's got to be more done to educate everybody and make it okay to talk about. So I think what you've said about having a culture where the support groups, I think, are really important, because you get that, what we've all said, when you talk to someone else and they go, oh, I had that, and you go, oh, it's not just me, I'm not mad, I'm not weird, that's okay. That in itself is therapeutic. But then I think obviously there's got to be a lot more done in terms of the policy side and reporting absences and training people. And we did the menopause first aid CPD to make sure that it isn't just, oh, you go see your line manager. Well, if that line manager isn't the right person to go and speak to about your heavy periods and your anxiety and, vaginal dryness, you're not going to want to go and speak to maybe the 25-year-old man that's your line manager.
Exactly.
So it's got to be the right person with some empathy, knowledge, very much so, as Claire said, education first.
Julie has stolen every single word I've written down.
Sorry.
So Julie, you can be muted next, because I've been writing little notes. I put no education, unaware, embarrassment, working for young. I mean, what woman wants to go if they can't sit down due to vaginal dryness? Who on earth wants to go and say to a 25, 30-year-old young man who's going to look at them and go, yuck? And you're just not going to have that conversation with a young man. And we're really open about it, us ladies here, but there's a lot of women that still call it the change.
They still, my mum always referred to it as
still go like this. I did a call yesterday with Simply
like
Health,
Miranda,
and they were
isn't it?
doing this, and they wouldn't say the word vulva or vagina, and I was thinking, where are you inserting this? And I was trying to get to the bottom of why this lady was. I was trying to be very professional, but I literally had to say, look, because she wouldn't unmic, she wouldn't show her video. So in the end, she did, and it was a ladies' talking group, but they were all sat there, all nodding, and I said, I think you've opened up a really big can of worms here. So let's do 5 minutes on vaginal atrophy and what is it. And it really caused. I always try and make it a little bit jokey, laughy, because some of the ladies looked absolutely mortified, and there are a lot of younger women that join the call. And I always say, do you mind me asking why you've joined? And do you know what? If there's one thing I hear from, and younger men as well as ladies, they come because their mums are struggling or their aunties. And what a lovely generation of human beings are coming through. They're a bit. I always have to say to my girls, Granny and Grandad are here. You're 26 now. They've got better. But I always remember Abby running in, because the twins are 26, they're both quite academic, and they would come in and say, we've done a really good experiment, Granny. You need a glass of water and a tampon, and this is what you do. And I'm thinking, oh, right, we didn't talk about those kind of conversations, but now the younger generation coming in, they're happy. And the amount of young lads that do come to these menopause presentations, and they say, my mum hasn't left the house in years, I'm really worried about her, I'm trying to get her to the doctor. And it's heartwarming, really, but it's sad at the same point, because we are a generation that didn't matter.
And it's funny, because Sarah and I had exactly that conversation yesterday, didn't we, after you were on the menopause training that you attended yesterday for one of your clients, was how different the younger generation are much more open. So mental health is something they talk about. Diversity and inclusion is something that they're very vocal about and have real strength of opinion on. And then also menopause and all of these things. My daughter's 31, and I talk to her about it all the time. And I've got a 34-year-old son, and he hears me and my husband talk about it. I can see him just sort of like looking like this. So he knows what's going on, but I know he's taking it in. And I know he talks to his dad because they work together as well. And I know that they have conversations about it. So it's a good learning for him without feeling awkward. But actually, Demi and her friends, they ask questions. They're much more. I asked my mum. I've even asked my mum recently, and she's like, oh, Yeah, I just took HRT, and she feels uncomfortable even now. I mean, she's in her late 70s. It's not something she talked about, but I think that the generation now much more open, much more capable of talking about it. And I think in businesses you've got this massive generational sort of like change where we've got 5 generations in a business. We've got the youngsters coming in going, oh yes, so blah 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 blah, and then the older generations just feel really awkward because it's not something they would generally talk about. And that's another thing that we're going to have to change. That's going to be a challenge that we're going to have to start to help people to feel comfortable. Think about the language that we're using so that people do feel comfortable to talk about it, so that we're not embarrassed, because embarrassment creates for me isolation, because then you're in your own head, and that's not always the best place for any of us to sit for too long.
And I think change is coming, and I think, you know, podcasts like this and the report that you've done, the work that you're doing is all adding to what's contributing to it. I recently went to a talk at my local football club, and it was about menopause, and actually they've got an accreditation now for being the first ever menopause friendly club. So they put all their staff, all the players and everything through menopause training. And actually, they've led the way. So we're now seeing like other football clubs who are really, and actually, you know, football clubs sometimes are, it's quite male oriented. It's changing, but you know, it is a big sort of male orientated sort of sport and things. So to actually see that leading the way, I think is really a positive change. And like I say, other clubs are now wanting to get that accreditation as well. So that's something that's really good.
Yeah, and I think from the report that we did as well, one of the things that came out, and I think it was half of the women surveyed, talked about the impact that menopause has on a daily basis at work, like every day. I just wonder whether, I mean, Claire, you talk to a lot of women through your coaching. What are the things that they're telling you that is really impacting them on a day-to-day basis at work? Because I think if we can talk a little bit about that, you know, anybody that watches this, please, if you're listening, listen to what the impact is on a day-to-day, because there may be very small things that businesses can do. It doesn't have to be the big gesture. It's sometimes just the simplest of things. So Claire, if there's anything that you could share.
Yeah, I mean, I've worked with quite a few businesses as well, and I think the term they have to try and make those reasonable adjustments, and that's a really difficult one, because if you're a lady driving an Arctic for Tesco's, you can't work from home. If you are a paramedic and your uniform is itchy scratchy, and you know, you can look at changing uniform for, you know, more cotton based, you know, with holes under the armpits, things like that. But I think one of the biggest things that women say to me is it's the concentration, it's the brain fog at work. They stand up to do a presentation and they say, everyone's looking at them, you've got 500 people, maybe predominantly men, and then they say, I don't even know what my name is, and I don't even know what I'm standing here talking about. I answer the work phone and I don't even know who I'm working for anymore, and it's embarrassment. I think lots of ladies struggle with heavy periods, with migraines, those things that might only be a couple of days here and there. But to me, if you want to be, you know, an employer to work for in the future and be menopause friendly and have a menopause action plan, whatever else in place, actually don't just have a nice couple of pages shoved in the back of a dusty cupboard. Be proud of that. Have it laminated, have it in I went into a garage and I said, put it in your service department. Let your lady customers and your men know that you're not just, you know, it's all right to tick that box. And I'm sure Julie will agree with me. There's lots of employers out there that want to tick a box and say, oh yeah, we need to do that. But you really need to actually genuinely want to help your staff, because in years to come, you know, some of the stats that are coming out, I think it's £30,614 according to Oxford Uni, to replace one employee, to retrain and have somebody's bottom back in that seat again. Why would you want to spend £30,000? And then you've got the lawsuits that are coming through. You know, and it happens to 51% of the population. Your wife, your partner, your female neighbour, your female colleague, maybe your daughter. This isn't something that is just affecting 8% of the population. It's affecting 51%. And if you want to be a menopause friendly employer, you need to be inclusive. You need to think women have worked damn hard to get to maybe their managerial roles. And they say to me, Claire, it is easier to leave then you've got a man saying, look, my mother went through this, basically put your big girl pants on and put up and shut up. And so many women say that to me, Claire, I don't want, I'm too emotional, I'm not in a good place. Do I want to do battle and have a standoff with a male manager who clearly doesn't know what menopause is, or maybe his wife has walked it and I'm not, and I feel a failure because I'm not walking it. And women do, we're back to that, you feel on your own, Lisa, like you were saying.
It is definitely isolating.
Julie, from your perspective.
Oh, everything that Claire said. But
we're going to be ranting in a minute.
I do agree. I think by having that conversation and knowing that you're okay to go and have that conversation, it should be welcomed. To say, listen to that individual. What can we do to help you? And, if it is that they're suffering with horrendous hot flushes, which, I think people really underestimate how awful they can be with the palpitations that go with it and that horrible spiral of, I'm going to have one, so my heart rate's gone up, so now I am having one right in the middle of a meeting with brain fog. It's very frightening. So, yes, looking at the very simple things that can be done in the workplace. It sounds a little bit trite, say, or put a desk fan, but actually it could be that, or sitting somewhere different, having a window that opens, or being nearer to the loo. Because if you are, I had endometriosis, and I was teaching at the time before I had my hysterectomy. I couldn't leave the classroom. And when you're having those horrendous, painful, heavy periods, it's so awful to think that you can't get to the loo. So I'd like to think that, every woman hasn't got to parade through a big open place, or you're going to the toilet again. There shouldn't be any of that stigma and taboo. So it has got to infiltrate a whole culture of a place. Everybody's got to be involved in that, whether it's the training, the education, the support, the chats, whether that's a tiny company or a giant one. We've done quite a lot of support in the NHS, and it's really hard because we were speaking to HSBC, who completely changed all their uniforms and made them menopause friendly. Wonderful. And then you've a lot of the nurses were saying, we can't change ours, and it's always hot in the hospital and you've got to wear all the protective gear or whatever. And so it has got to be done on an individual basis, not always what we would love everybody to have this option, but yeah, it has got to be realistic, but just making it easier for people. I couldn't have had a later working day being a teacher, and a lot of professions wouldn't. But that, if it's available, if it's an office where that's something you could do, is one of the easiest things. Would transform it, keep people at work, because when you've had one of those nights that you don't sleep, and I think I went about 10 years of having awful insomnia, well, you're not going to be great at work because you've just gone to sleep when the alarm goes off at 6 a.m. So that's when you want to think, today would be all right for me to go in a bit later or work from home this morning. Easy things like that, wherever it's possible.
Flexibility, isn't it?
Yeah.
Flexibility for all. And I think also the feeling comfortable to say if you're in a meeting, and even now I have said it sometimes, and it's just a bit of a tumbleweed moment where I said, oh, sorry, I'm having a bit of a menopause moment, I'm really hot and I can't remember what I was about to say, and I felt nervous the first time I said that, but that's what was happening. I thought, oh, if I was having a pain in my foot, I'd just go, oh, I've got pain in my foot, what on earth's going on? I wouldn't have even considered not saying that, or I need to stand up because my back's hurting. But the fact that, yeah, you do have those moments where, and you're right, you panic because you think, oh no, and now I'm starting to feel this happen. So I think when you say it can be a bit tumbleweedy because everyone sort of looks at you, but the more you say it, they go, oh, do you want to stop for a minute? Do you want to go to full? And it just becomes normal, doesn't it? Because it becomes part of normal conversation. So if all of us that are now at work, and kind of, if you think about the support, there is support more now. If you could go back in time and you could think about one piece of support that you would have armed yourself with as you were stepping into menopause in the workplace, what do you think that would be?
Oh,
just one each.
I would say be open and own it. If only we were that brave, though.
Yeah.
And it does take being brave. I totally agree with that.
Yeah. And I think that if we every single workplace needs somebody that can champion this and make sure that we've always found that there's always one person who, through personal experience, like all of us, are doing something to change this for the others around us. Then they lead it, and just by having that person that can push and drive things forward, that will help to filter it through the whole of the organisation. So yeah, I agree. If only we could. I do understand it's not always easy though, and I know that I've had people say, "Oh, I couldn't come to the menopause session because when I said it in the workplace, they were, oh, what are you doing with that? Is that menopause?" And this derogatory term.
Yes.
You know, I think it needs a rebrand, but
I agree.
good luck with that one.
Yeah. Emma, what about you?
I think we just need to be, like you say, more open. We need to talk about it more. Like you say, the younger generation are actually open to talking about a lot more things than we were, really. So yeah, talk to people about it, have somebody who champions it in the workplace, and really educate people. I think for me, it was, if I would have known more about it, known what to expect, what the symptoms were, and how to manage those while I'm trying to navigate my way through my, my career and my family life and everything, that would have really helped, rather than kind of being diagnosed and then going, oh God, I need to read about this subject because I know nothing about it. So.
Reactive.
Forewarned is forearmed, ladies.
Yeah, I think that's perfect.
I think it's knowing the options for me, because there's so much that you can do for yourself. I've learned the hard way, but there are things you can do for yourself, and then obviously there's the HRT options, and there are many now, which is great, which was never the case before. My mum's of a generation. Apparently, she never had the menopause, ladies, so it must have skipped a generation in my family. But back to sort of Emma and Lisa's point, I think it was just because it wasn't talked about, right? Whereas my 14-year-old daughter is sick of me talking about it, but at least I know she will know what her options are, right? Because I know I get a bit boring chatting away about it. My son, who's 11, is even more bored, believe you me. But I know she's going to be fully armed. So it does,
and he's going to support his girlfriend, wife, or if he has a female partner.
Claire.
Happy days.
That's really important. So for me, it's, if I'd known the options.
Yeah.
And again, it's back to education, isn't it? Which is the forearms. Yeah, absolutely. Forewarned is forearmed and all that.
Yeah, and I think for me, it's definitely being open and talking about it, because I think, for certainly, Sarah and I were talking about this morning, my personality is such that I talk, and then I'm good. So what did I do as soon as went to menopause? Stop talking. So it all went in. And then it wasn't me. I wasn't talking about it. And I was talking about, not talking to my husband, thinking this is my problem. I've got to fix it. You can't help me. I have to deal with this on my own. And for me, that was a challenge. And actually talking about it, I have got the support from him, because now he kind of understands a bit more why suddenly one day I woke up and I was a different person, and he wasn't quite sure whether it was him or what had happened overnight, body snatch, something's gone wrong. So I think for me it's definitely feeling confidently, the ability to talk about it within your family, because that's definitely a support network that you absolutely need. But then to then put that outside of your family as well, and talk to your friends and talk in your workplace. And if we talk about physical health so very comfortably, but we seem to really struggle with mental health, but that's definitely improved. And I think definitely COVID has pushed us on quite quickly from that. But then this is another thing that we need to be super comfortable and not feel embarrassed, because our embarrassment creates isolation, which sticks us into our own little heads. And no one wants to be in my head when I'm sat in it for too long, for sure. So yeah, definitely.
Although it is entertaining having two perimenopausal women trying to run a business.
Yeah. There are good days and bad days to that.
Bad days. Depends where we both are in any given day.
Yeah, but what we've said is, if you haven't got 100%, then I have to have 100%. And if I haven't got it, then Sarah, I have to say, and we have to tell each other, okay, it's not good. Today is not a good day. So can you just help me? Yeah, okay, I'll stop you from losing your rag, or don't let me send this email because this is not going to go well. It's that kind of, I'm very honest where we're sitting.
Have to be.
Yeah.
And if we're both having a bad day, we just close the business, and then,
don't do any work.
Start again the following week. No, I'm joking. Brilliant. Ladies, thank you so much. We've massively enjoyed the session today, and we could talk for at least another 2 hours and probably rant quite a lot, but I am cognizant of the fact that we all have busy diaries. So I just wanted to say thank you very much for joining us today on the podcast. It's been brilliant talking to you all.
Thank you very much. Thanks, ladies.
Thank you, ladies, and thank you for all you're doing. Your research and it's just brilliant. And these podcasts, this helps to get menopause out to society as a whole.
Yeah,
really
absolutely.
And it's lovely to meet you, Julie and Emma.
And you too. And I think just leave with the positive note that it does get better and life does exist post-menopause. I'm 64 and, life's good again. So don't give up hope.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
Brilliant.
Thanks,
you,
ladies. Thank
Lovely
you.
to have met you.
Bye.
Bye,
Bye, ladies. Bye.